The clock in Natalie Flower's cramped Chicago editing studio ticked like a countdown. Each second felt heavier than the last, a metronome marking the slow descent into an obsession that would consume her. Natalie wasn't always a conspiracy chaser. 12 years ago, she'd been a respected documentary filmmaker with a reputation for measured, fact-driven storytelling. Her documentaries explored forgotten histories, uncovering narratives that most preferred to leave buried. The Chicago Independent Film Festival had twice awarded her for outstanding investigative work, praising her ability to turn complex stories into coherent visual journeys. Her wife Elena had fallen in love with her precision. A high school biology teacher with a methodical mind, Elena appreciated Natalie's approach to storytelling. Their relationship was built on a foundation of mutual respect, intellectual curiosity, and a shared belief in finding truth, no matter how uncomfortable. Everything changed when her brother-in-law Michael died. Michael was different, always had been. The black sheep of the family, he'd spent decades as a freelance researcher, collecting obscure folklore and urban legends. While other families shared vacation photos and birthday memories, the Flowers family album was filled with Michael's meticulous notes, newspaper clippings, and cryptic photographs. When he passed away from a sudden heart attack at 54, he left behind a storage unit that would become the catalyst for Natalie's descent. The unit was a time capsule. Thousands of unmarked digital tapes, hundreds of notebooks, stacks of old newspapers, filing cabinets stuffed with documents from local historical societies, police records, and personal interviews. Most people would have called it junk. Natalie saw it as a treasure trove. The first tape she discovered wasn't anything extraordinary. Grainy footage, poor sound quality. A handheld camera capturing what seemed to be teenagers talking in hushed tones. But as she dug deeper, a pattern emerged. Local teenagers, a dare, a myth that seemed to pulse with an undercurrent of genuine fear. They called it the Midnight Stare. The legend was simple yet horrifying in its simplicity. Needle Eyes, a spectral figure said to haunt the abandoned Elgin Railway Tunnel, could be summoned through an impossible ritual. The rules were precise, non-negotiable. Stand at the tunnel's entrance at exactly midnight. Maintain unbroken eye contact for precisely 67 minutes. No blinking, no looking away. Participants would use eye drops, tape their eyelids, set up cameras, anything to prove they could complete the challenge. Most dismissed it as teenage horror fantasy, urban legend, the kind of story passed around campfires and late-night sleepovers. But Michael's collection suggested something more sinister. Elena watched her spiral. Where once Natalie had been methodical and controlled, now she became obsessive. Their home transformed. The spare bedroom became a research hub. Wall-sized corkboards covered in photographs, interview transcripts, and interconnected strings mapping potential connections. "This isn't you," Elena would say, her voice a mixture of concern and frustration. "You're a documentarian. You investigate. You don't chase ghosts." But Natalie knew something lurked in those tapes. Something Michael had discovered. Something that demanded exposure. The teenagers who spoke about Needle Eyes weren't typical thrill seekers. They were scared. Genuinely terrified. Some claimed to have lost friends. Others spoke of unexplained disappearances. Their stories were consistent in a way urban legends rarely are. One interview, buried deep in Michael's collection, stood out. A young woman named Sarah Rodriguez, her hands shaking as she spoke to an off-camera interviewer. "It watches," Sarah had said. "Even when you think it's not there. It remembers." Forensic analysis of the original teenage accounts revealed disturbing consistencies. Medical records showed increased psychological trauma among those who claimed to have attempted the ritual. School attendance records indicated multiple unexplained disappearances in Elgin during a 3-year period. Local law enforcement records were frustratingly incomplete. Most case files remained open, labeled as missing persons with no substantial leads. But Michael's notes suggested a pattern. Each disappearance happened within 2 weeks of someone attempting the midnight stare ritual. Natalie knew she needed proof. Not rumors, not speculation, hard evidence. The high-resolution camera she set up at the tunnel's entrance was military-grade, capable of capturing the minutest details in near-total darkness, infrared, thermal imaging, multiple spectrum capabilities. If something existed in that tunnel, her equipment would find it. 67 minutes, the precise time mentioned in every account. No more, no less. When the footage first played back, nothing seemed unusual. Pure, absolute darkness. But Natalie saw something, a flicker, a presence just beyond perception's edge. A distortion that seemed to breathe, to pulse with an almost imperceptible rhythm. Her colleagues thought she was hallucinating, paranoid. Elena begged her to stop, to let go of this obsession that was consuming their life. "What are you trying to prove?" Elena had asked during their last serious conversation. That Michael was right? That there's something supernatural lurking in an abandoned tunnel? Natalie couldn't explain the compulsion, the need to understand, to expose whatever truth Michael had discovered. 9 days after that recording, she vanished. The package that arrived at her production office seemed impossible. Fragmented video evidence, a notebook filled with increasingly erratic notes, and 2 eyelids, preserved, clinical, definitely human, forensically confirmed to be Natalie's. What happened in that tunnel remains unknown, but something watches, something remembers, and it's still waiting, in the dark, watching, remembering, always remembering.